To get you up to speed, the Twisted Tales take a Disney movie and say, what if blank? This is a Twisted Tale anthology which has 16 different stories. Last time I talked about Cast Out, What If Snow White Learned Magic by Olivia Blackburn. This time I'm talking about A First Mission, What If Mulan Became the Emperor's Advisor by Elizabeth Lim. I happen to know that Elizabeth Lim was the same author who did Reflection, which was the full-length Twisted Tale that took Mulan and said, what if Mulan went to the underworld? This isn't in the same timeline as that, but I guess nobody gets to write a Twisted Tale about Mulan except for Elizabeth Lim. A First Mission is a bit ham-fisted, but otherwise it's a somewhat fluffy, optimistic tale with a happy ending at least. I kind of like how it handled Shifu's character, the advisor guy. Without spoiling anything, Shifu has a certain development that I liked. I thought it was like the road less traveled that should be traveled more often with his character. That being said, it's kind of preachy with the gender equality thing. Well, for the most part, it wasn't saying much that was objectionable. Well, except for the fact that you can argue that it kind of used the word men as a derogatory, well, in a derogatory sense, I mean, but you could be a lawyer about it and say, well, it's more about the absence of women in that setting. There's a part where Mulan bemoans needing to listen to a bunch of men. I wish it would have been phrased differently. And one thing I did think was kind of weird was how Mulan's talking about how she doesn't really want to be the Emperor's advisor, and yet sometimes she acts like she does want to be the Emperor's advisor. But while she's talking like she doesn't want to be the Emperor's advisor, she's saying that she should be the Emperor's advisor, as if she's making a martyr of herself. And she's pretty inconsistent about her feelings towards being the Emperor's advisor. So A First Mission was, with the exception of a few things, kind of acceptable. And so far I'm still not feeling like I can recommend a Twisted Tale anthology yet. Now then, my updates on Prince of Thorns and Nightmares. First things first, I was talking about how it said that Philip Squire could easily take him in a fight, and I was saying that could just mean that she could easily be a worthy opponent who may or may not win. And it does say here that when Philip and his squire are sparring, they have a 50-50 split on who wins, which is acceptable under the premise of Philip not having gone through his upgrades yet. In case you didn't see the first video talking about this, this is Sleeping Beauty, Disney's Sleeping Beauty from Philip's perspective. There has been signs of warming up to the right directions, but Philip starts out as a hard to put up with protagonist. He even says the dreaded words, "I'm not a hero." I hate when protagonists don't want to be the hero and don't want to do the plot. And there has already been signs of improvement, but I'm worried that Philip is still going to be in his unacceptable state for too long. When I read this book, well, here's the thing. The book is aware that he needs to grow, and it's telling me that he will eventually become the prince we all know and love from Sleeping Beauty. But what worries me is that I'm going to not get enough of that hero prince, and I'm going to be stuck with the unacceptable version of him for too long. So for context, I've read chapter 6 now, and Philip has yet to be charming and charismatic. Without spoiling anything, I have read an interaction or two between him and Aurora, and that's another, as with Philip's character in general, it's starting out with that unacceptable status quo that needs to, well, not just unacceptable, unpleasant to read about status quo. In Sleeping Beauty, Aurora talks about Philip as she saw him in her dreams, and she's talking about how romantic he is. And from what I've read so far, the description of Philip as being romantic in her dream doesn't make any sense yet. And yes, you can make something really interesting about a couple that starts out with animosity towards each other and warms up to each other, but the way it has things set up between them, it's hard to envision a healthy relationship between them. Not just because of bad first impressions, there's something in the mechanics of how they interacted with each other that is going to take a lot of work to counter. I'm starting to worry that the counters it might introduce, with things getting better with Philip and Aurora, I'm worried that even that might be insufficient to outweigh their history. But again, I've only read the first 6 chapters and there's a long ways to go. But I will say that I do not remember the first few chapters of Prince of Song and Sea outlining such a hard to salvage situation. And the interactions between Ariel and Eric in Prince of Song and Sea, Prince of Song and Sea was The Little Mermaid from Eric's perspective. The interactions between Ariel and Eric in that book were instantly charming. And yes, there's some comedy between Philip and Aurora, but it's always done with this sense of bitterness to it. And yes, bitter comedy can work at the beginning of a romantic subplot, but as I was saying before, there's something deeper than that makes this seem like a hard sell. You know what, I'm just gonna say it. It's not really that big of a spoiler because, like I said, I'm still on just the first few chapters. Philip and Aurora see each other in their dreams, and they've only been able to talk to each other back and forth for these most recent dreams. The problem is, Philip and Aurora have been hearing each other's day-to-day operations in their dreams for years and years. So when they go to sleep, they dream about hearing the stuff that the other person said during the day. So these two people have been uncontrollably listening in on each other's lives for years and years. They know so much about each other. And the problem is, they know so much about each other, they've heard so much about each other, and they don't like each other. After so many years of being forced to listen to what the other person is saying, you'd think that they would know each other well enough to know if they're ever going to like that other person. I mean, you would think so at least. So the fact that they've heard so much and they just keep hating each other doesn't really spell out a optimistic future for their relationship. Now, as I've been anticipating, Philip is probably going to go through a lot of growth as a character and become someone that Aurora is more likely to be in love with. But Aurora is pretty close to how she is in the movie. So it's hard to envision Aurora changing so much that she would become someone different from the person that Philip doesn't already like. But who knows, next time I might be telling you that I was wrong about everything and how all the bitterness was actually completely necessary and makes full sense in the full context. But we'll just have to see when that happens. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and not be bitter towards your true love.